More bad weather on the way. Hundreds stranded. The urgent rescue right now. Vermont's capital submerged. Homes in pieces and floating away. And train tracks left with nothing left to support them. The dam on the verge of failing. Is it about to get worse before it gets better? Our team live in the flood zone tonight. Also, 70 million remain under heat advisories from California to South Florida. We'll show you what it's like living and working in triple-digit heat. So how long will it last? Al Roker standing by. Plus, the slow-moving disaster near Los Angeles. A landslide taking a dozen homes and threatening even more. What's behind it? Overseas, Ukraine's President Zelensky coming face-to-face with NATO leaders, demanding his war-torn country be admitted to the alliance. This as he's about to meet with President Biden. Golf under fire. PGA Tour officials face intense criticism from Congress over plans to merge with the Saudi-backed golf tour. 9/11 families at the hearing. The growing malaria scare. Mosquitoes carrying the infectious disease detected in the U.S. for the first time in 20 years. The effort to control the mosquitoes that carry it. The hostage standoff at Caesar's Palace. The suspect tossing furniture from stories above. And after his big upset at Wimbledon, could he be America's next tennis sensation?
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
And good evening, I'm Tom Llamas, in for Lester tonight. It's being called historic and catastrophic, the flooding emergency that is nowhere close to being over tonight. Parts of Vermont remain covered in water and mud after the river that runs through the capital crested at more than 21 feet. More than 100 rescues have been carried out after dozens of locations in the state received 6 inches of rain or more since Sunday. And tonight, all eyes on a dam that could overflow and make things even worse. While in the south and southwest, it's the oppressive heat that remains the top concern. We'll hear from Al Roker in a moment about that heat dome, but we begin with NBC's Kristen Dahlgren in the flood zone tonight in Vermont.
From the air, the scope of the disaster is unmistakable. Vermont's capital city submerged. The Winooski River unstoppable as it swelled to more than 21 feet, its second highest flood level on record, overtopping its banks and stranding hundreds.
Make no mistake, the devastation and flooding we're experiencing across Vermont is historic and catastrophic.
Swiftwater rescue teams from several states performed more than 100 rescues. These people pulled from a downtown hotel. With the first floor underwater, there was no other way to get out. How quickly did things go bad?
Yeah, really quickly. Yeah, it went from, water at the front of the hotel up to over the cars.
This afternoon, Mayor Jack McCullough getting his first up-close look at the devastation.
Probably worse than I expected. Yeah, it's not good.
The city now under a boil water advisory, and it's not over. Officials closely monitoring a dam about 5 miles upstream, dangerously close to overtopping and sending even more water into Montpelier.
What we're told is that we're within about a foot of that happening, and so that could be very bad if that happens.
Even the police station is flooded. They've had to move operations elsewhere. Communications also a big concern. These guys are headed out now. They're going to take a generator up to the top of the building to make sure that their calls keep coming in. 14 counties in Vermont have now been declared disaster areas.
It's awful. It's atrocious.
So many have had to flee their homes.
I was like, we have to go now. Like, now. Like, we have to go right now. And so we got our kids and we grabbed our dog and we left.
Some towns are still completely cut off. Air rescues happening where boats and trucks can't get in. In Ludlow, you can see why. The ground completely washed away beneath this train track. Elsewhere, entire houses succumb to the powerful current. Roads and bridges buckled. What is left when the water finally recedes will be a massive and expensive cleanup. Something the Hudson Valley knows all too well. Today, still picking up the pieces from the same system. For some, moving on will be infinitely harder. Ed Nugent lost his daughter Pamela in the floodwaters.
She panicked again and she just grabbed the dog, came out here. As soon as she hit the road, the water hit her, it took her down. 2 seconds, she was gone.
Even as the floodwaters begin to recede, the pain may take much longer.
And with that, Kristen Dahlgren joins us now live. Kristen, from what it looks like there behind you, there are multiple threats there tonight.
Yeah, there are, Tom. They are still watching that dam very closely. The latest update is that it is holding steady, but at capacity, so not a lot of wiggle room. Meantime, there is more rain in the forecast. The ground here is saturated. As you can see, the rivers are full. There are not a lot of places where any more water could go, Tom.
Yeah, that rain would be devastating. All right, Kristen Dahlgren leading us off tonight. Now to the other serious weather threats so many are facing, that dangerous heat wave that has set temperatures into the triple digits for weeks. 70 million under alerts, heat alerts tonight, in part because of that heat dome that just won't go away. Kathy Park has that story.
Tonight, the brutal heat building across the country, turning typical hotspots even hotter. Vegas baking at 117, Phoenix is sweltering 109, and Death Valley could hit 130 degrees by this weekend.
So this pattern's been a little bit stuck.
Meanwhile, Miami reaching its 30th consecutive day with a heat index in the triple digits.
The humidity is what kills you.
For roofers here, there's no escaping the elements.
I usually wet my wrist, my neck. Those are the cool down areas for me. And that works for me.
The Miami-Dade County mayor telling us the chief heat officer is zeroing in on these extreme conditions.
They're really understanding that this is serious, that it's here to stay, and that we all have to adapt and protect.
And it's not just soaring temperatures. Florida is literally in hot water. Thanks to a marine heat wave, water temperatures in some spots off the coast are in the mid to upper 90s. That's 5 to 10 degrees above average. And fueling all this is a stagnant and stifling weather pattern. Later this week, the Sunshine State will be baking under a Saharan dust cloud blowing in from Africa.
It's about a mile above our heads when it comes, but it really stifles the thunderstorms when they come, when those arrive, and it makes for some very hot days in places like South Florida.
Just 3 weeks into summer and already smashing multiple heat records across the globe. Kathy Park, NBC News, Miami.
Al Roker joins us now live in studio. Al, I know you're tracking it all, and it's the summer of the heat dome, it appears.
That's right, and this is not going anywhere, as Kathy alluded, from Miami all the way to Sacramento. 70 million people under this heat dome, jet stream to the north. Triple digits into Friday for Vegas, Albuquerque, Dallas, San Antonio, close to that in St. Louis and Memphis. We slide to the south and look at these heat indexes. Triple digits for Miami, also Jacksonville, Pensacola, and New Orleans. And we've got severe weather tomorrow, starting with tonight from Miles City all the way to Des Moines for isolated tornadoes possible. Tomorrow, south of Chicago down to Springfield, Indianapolis, 18 million people at risk. And this rain, that heavy rain again up into parts of New England may cause some flooding, and locally 3 to 4 inches, Tom, through the Mississippi River Valley.
All right, Al, we appreciate all of that. Thank you. We want to move now to Southern California, where a landslide has brought disaster to one community, knocking out more than a dozen homes and more still sliding tonight. Steve Patterson with the homes on the verge of collapse.
Tonight, a community on edge beneath the shattered roofs and cracked walls, with more than a dozen homes still on the move.
You can actually hear the snap, crackle, and pop every minute when you're there.
Today, the LA County Fire Department red tagging 12 homes as unsafe, with 10 actively moving and another 16 under constant watch.
Are you worried about your house?
Oh, yes, of course.
Residents in Rolling Hills Estates, 25 miles south of Los Angeles, started noticing cracks in their homes and on the ground Saturday. Officials say the ground gave way to a landslide, taking 12 homes with it. Weber Yan had just 10 minutes to grab what he could and evacuate his home.
Is there any part of your home that is left standing?
No.
It's still sliding down.
It's 10 foot a day.
The cause is under investigation, pending a geology report.
We don't know how long that these homes are going to continue to move.
But officials say a fissure was found along the destroyed homes, raising suspicions about oversaturation after California's record-breaking winter rainfall.
It's moving quickly. There's nothing to do to stop it, and it's the most shocking, surreal thing I have ever seen.
Tonight, with parts of homes still tumbling into the ravine behind them, residents urging for accountability.
I'm angry people have dropped the ball because there was indication that in April something might have happened. and no one alerted us.
And Tom, the hope here is that severe land movement is isolated to the homes that you see over my shoulder, but we won't know that until a geological survey is done in this area. Officials say that will happen soon, but the extent of this unknown until officials get here. Tom?
All right, Steve, thank you for that. We want to head overseas now to that high-stakes NATO summit and a major stalemate from the alliance about whether Ukraine will be allowed to join, all after stinging criticism of NATO from Ukraine's president. Peter Alexander is there live in Lithuania for us tonight. And Peter, NATO did not go nearly as far as Ukraine wanted today.
Yeah, Tom, that's right. The joint statement from the leaders here, including the U.S., says that Ukraine will be invited to join NATO, quote, when allies agree and conditions are met. Among those conditions, more democratic reforms. But to be clear, that is not at all what Ukrainian President Zelensky has been demanding. And it reveals lingering divisions within NATO, with the U.S. and Germany among those blocking Ukraine from joining the alliance now, where all NATO members need to be in agreement. Earlier today, Zelensky made his frustrations clear, calling NATO's position absurd. He's going to be face-to-face with President Biden here tomorrow. Still, the White House, Tom, is already touting this summit as a success, with Turkey's president dropping his opposition to Sweden's bid to join NATO. Another example, President Biden's advisors say that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has backfired. Tom?
All right, Peter Alexander with a lot of new reporting for us. Peter, we appreciate it. Back here at home to Washington, executives of the PGA Tour were grilled today at a U.S. Senate hearing. They defended their controversial plan to merge with Saudi Arabia's LIV Golf. Here's Ryan Nobles.
Tonight, the PGA Tour under pressure.
Today's hearing is about much more than the game of golf. It's about how a brutal, repressive regime can buy influence.
The tour hopes to cut a deal with the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which runs the LIV Golf Tour. LIV Golf was poaching some of the PGA Tour's biggest stars, like Phil Mickelson and Brooks Koepka. The PGA Tour initially fought back against what amounted to a hostile takeover, but ultimately came to the table because they had no choice.
Money, rivers of money, and a rational market force.
That money is what has members of Congress concerned.
What are the amounts that have been discussed?
North of $1 billion. The Saudi government has a history of human rights abuses, including their connection to the death of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And Brett Eagleson, whose father died in 9/11, believes there's not enough money in the world to ignore the possible connection the Saudis had to those attacks.
They folded like a beach chair.
Jimmy Dunn, a tour board member who helped open the door to the deal, led a company that lost 66 workers on that day.
If any person had the remotest connection to an attack on our country and the murder of my friends, I am the last guy that would be sitting at a table with them.
But Eagleson, who handed Dunn an FBI report outlining the Saudi connections to the 9/11 terrorists, doesn't agree.
Mr. Dunn needs to realize who, in fact, he is actually getting into business with.
And this partnership is far from a done deal. The two sides have until the end of the year to come to an agreement. Tom?
All right, Ryan, thank you for that. In 60 seconds, a former member of the Manson cult freed after serving more than 50 years for murder, and a prominent college football coach fired over allegations of hazing in his program. We speak to a former player about it next.
I said that the world was basically crumbling below our feet. And I had no idea that those occurrences was going to happen south of LA, about 25 miles. It's just unbelievable in the traits that we're leaving behind towards the distraction of all the materials that we're draining from the earth. The proof is in the pudding.
And this just in tonight, Charles Manson follower Leslie Van Houten is being paroled from a California prison after 53 years. Now 73 years old, she was convicted of the 1969 murders of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. A state court blocked Governor Gavin Newsom's latest attempt to stop her release. And tonight, a prominent college football coach is out of a job, fired in a growing hazing scandal. Maggie Vespa has this one.
Tonight, the culmination of a months-long hazing scandal has Northwestern University parting ways with its winningest coach ever.
1 on 3! 1, 2, 3!
After 17 seasons, head coach and former Northwestern linebacker Pat Fitzgerald was fired Monday. The university's president writing the head coach is ultimately responsible for the culture of his team. The firing follows a 6-month independent investigation into allegations of hazing, which found evidence it happened, but no evidence, the school says, coaches knew. Still, the university initially suspended Fitzgerald for 2 weeks, but over the weekend reconsidered. Northwestern student newspaper published allegations from former players who claimed they endured coerced sexual acts, one dubbed the car wash, forcing them to spin naked in the showers as teammates entered and basically rub up against a bare naked man. Former offensive lineman and son of Mexican immigrants Ramon Diaz Jr., who played under Fitzgerald until 2009, also remembers racist hazing.
They just said, we need to shave your head. It's Cinco de Mayo was shaving my head.
Diaz, along with other players quoted by the student newspaper, believes coaches knew about hazing.
I just felt like this is what you have to do to play football.
Fitzgerald maintaining he had no knowledge whatsoever of any form of hazing, seen here denouncing hazing in 2014.
There's zero tolerance for hazing. There's no reason why they ever have it.
Tonight, shockwaves on campus shared by the student reporters who brought players' allegations to light.
Our hope is always just spreading the truth. It's no longer something that can be, swept under a rug and kept secret.
Northwestern has yet to name a new coach, and the team's season starts in less than 2 months. Tom?
Okay, Maggie, thank you for that. And we're back in a moment with the latest on a hostage drama at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas and inside the high-tech fight to stop the spread of mosquito-borne malaria in the U.S. Stay with us.
Unbelievable that somebody would do them poor kids that way. My God. Unbelievable. Got a bunch of sickos out there.
Back now with a dramatic scene out of Las Vegas when a man barricaded himself inside of a Caesars Palace hotel room, breaking the glass windows, as you can see here, throwing furniture from stories above. Police say the suspect grabbed a woman in the hallway of the hotel and locked her in his room. A short time ago, the SWAT team entered that room and arrested the man. They say that woman is safe tonight. Okay, also tonight, for the first time in 20 years, mosquitoes are transmitting malaria right here in the U.S. And in recent weeks, a total of 7 people have now been infected in Florida and Texas. Tonight, Priscilla Thompson on why it's happening and the rush to stop the spread.
In California, this drone is on the defensive. In Florida, trucks are on the hunt. All of it in a battle with the tiniest but most serious of threats, mosquitoes, which for the first time in 20 years are responsible for locally transmitted malaria spreading in parts of the U.S. 6 cases in Florida and 1 in Texas near the Mexico border. What went through your mind when you heard that?
It is unprecedented.
Max Vigilant is the director of the Mosquito Control Division in Harris County, Texas, preparing for what may come his way.
This trap has collected for us on average 35 different species of mosquitoes.
He's responsible for collecting and testing thousands of mosquito samples across Houston. Is climate change playing a role here?
It is a major factor. We have the water, we have the temperature, we have the humidity. We're looking at movement of mosquitoes from areas that normally you would not see so many mosquitoes.
In Sarasota County, Florida, Dr. Manuel Gordillo treated 4 patients with malaria.
It can be difficult to diagnose.
He says the incubation period for malaria could be anywhere from a week to several months.
There may be people that are infected now with low-grade symptoms or no symptoms that will manifest the disease at a later point.
County officials are urging people not to go outside at night when mosquitoes are most active and to wear repellent. Experts say only buy EPA-approved mosquito repellent. Read the label for how often to reapply and be sure to put it on both exposed skin and your clothes. Important precautions as the risk for mosquito season will remain for months. Priscilla Thompson, NBC News, Houston.
And when we come back, the American making a Cinderella run at Wimbledon.
Living with eczema, we're used to
resources working that angle. If they approached me, I'd be very open to talking about it if it was serious. But to spend a lot of time thinking about what might be fair and reasonable and reaching out, I just don't see it.
You know who needs to be asking for a deal? Walty Nada.
Yes.
What is he
does.
thinking?
He does.
Mary
I agree.
McCord and Greg Bluestein. And by the way, Joe Slobodnik would never do anything wrong. He's a really good guy. Thank you both very much. And still ahead, Republican attempts to dig up dirt on Joe Biden backfire again with the indictment of their so-called whistleblower for allegedly acting as an agent of the Chinese government. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You cannot make this stuff up. We'll be right back.
When is it going to stop?
Reality. For more than a year, PGA Tour officials and players slammed the LIV Tour. But in the end, PGA Tour executive Ron Price says U.S. professional golf, as we knew it, would not survive without a merger.
We faced a real threat that LIV Golf, which is 100% financed by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, would become the leader of professional golf.
But that was not enough for some angry lawmakers.
Today's hearing is about much more than the game of golf. It's about how a brutal, repressive regime can buy influence, indeed, even take over a cherished American institution to cleanse its public image.
15 of the 19 hijackers in the 9/11 attack were Saudi Arabian citizens, leading survivors' families to sue the regime over it. And more recently, the regime was condemned worldwide for brutally murdering journalist Jamal Khashoggi with a bone saw. The U.S. intelligence report claimed Khashoggi was killed by agents of Saudi Arabia in 2018. Now, the Saudi investment fund is backed by more than $600 billion. Price says the Saudis' investment in the new merger will be north of $1 billion, adding that the exact details are still being worked out. In front of families of 9/11 victims, Senator Ron Johnson defending the PGA Tour's decisions, saying it shouldn't be up to them to be sports' moral compass.
The PGA Tour accurately viewed the LIV as an existential threat. It would be grossly unfair to expect the PGA Tour to bear the full burden of holding Saudi Arabia accountable. After all, anyone who drives a car or uses oil-based products has helped fill the coffers of the Saudi Public Investment Fund.
Now, the framework agreement between the Saudis and the PGA Tour must still be approved by the PGA Tour's 10-member policy board, which includes star Rory McIlroy and 4 other PGA Tour players. But when and if it does go through, it will be tough to heal the wounds of the last year.
I still hate LIV. Like, I hate LIV. Like, I hope it goes away, and I would fully expect that it does. I want to have faith that this is the best thing for all of us, but it's clear that that's not the consensus.
As it's come to fruition now, I think that this is the best thing that could ever happen for the game of golf, and I'm extremely proud to be a part of that, but I truly believe in the end the game of golf wins.
Now, as part of today's hearing, the Senate subcommittee released documents detailing the secret negotiations between the two sides. And one of the proposals from the Saudi Public Investment Fund was that Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy would own their own LIV teams and play 10 LIV events a year. Another proposal from the Saudis was that the governor of the Saudi Investment Fund, Yasir Al-Rumayyan, would get to be a member of Augusta National and the Royal and Ancient Golf Club. Now, Aaron, the PGA officials say, none of the terms are official yet, but I think it's safe to say that Tiger Woods is not going to be playing 10 LIV golf events a year as a part of this deal.
Certainly not. All right, Andy, thank you very much. And Tiger Woods, of course, has taken a very principled stand on this from day one. Out front now, legendary sportscaster Bob Costas. So, Bob, the PGA Tour's representatives say that the unlimited resources of the Saudis back them into a corner. Talking to people at the PGA over the past year, they had a very principled view on this. Never in a million years. It's wrong. They chopped someone up with a bone saw. And now here we are, and it's actually happening. They're saying that the Saudis would have owned golf if they didn't do this. Do you buy that defense?
Actually, I do. Very few people have been on the issue of sports washing for as long as I have, whether it's the IOC in Russia or China or FIFA in Qatar or Qatar, if you prefer. And Jake Tapper and I were on this going back a year and a half ago, but I do believe that there was no alternative. Since there is no legal way, so far as I understand, for Congress or any other entity to stop this from going forward. If LIV had continued to exist as a separate entity, eventually they would have destroyed the PGA. The PGA tried to up the prize money. They say they dipped into their savings, or whatever you want to call it, the reserve fund, to do that. But over time, the Saudis, who aren't adhering to what we understand to be any kind of normal business model, they don't care how much money they lose, they've got a bottomless well, take 4 or 5 players every year away from the PGA Tour, and keeping in mind that the Masters are not controlled by the majors rather, are not controlled by the PGA Tour. So Brooks Koepka just won the PGA, ironically, but that's the PGA Championship, not controlled by the PGA Tour. Neither is the British Open, the US Open, or the Masters. So a lot of those big name golfers can make their legacy at the majors, which is really what counts the most, while still collecting all kinds of money from LIV. So I think they struck the best possible deal under very adverse circumstances, and the key, I watched the entire hearing today, the key point they kept emphasizing was that the PGA Tour would maintain control over how golf is run, that the Saudis would have only a minority representation on the board, and that all the decisions would be controlled by the PGA, and everything that you see would more or less line up with the traditions and sensibilities that golf fans associate with the PGA. But the point that Senator Blumenthal made was, look, if they're pouring $1 billion into it, at minimum, that's the start, then no matter what the numbers are on the board, they're going to have disproportionate influence, and who knows where that takes us.
Right, and that's the crucial question, right? He calls it sports washing, allowing Saudi money to gloss over the human rights violations, right? But the CIA obviously had concluded that the Saudi crown prince was behind chopping up Jamal Khashoggi with a bone saw. I mean, just to, to be blunt about it. And they have invested in WWE. They've invested in Formula One. I mean, basically, is this sort of, in a sense, U.S. saying there's nothing they can do about it?
Well, the leagues, for example, the NBA has allowed the Qatari sovereign investment fund to purchase 5%, or buy in at 5%, to the Capitals of the NHL, the Mystics of the WNBA, and the Wizards of the NBA, who are all controlled by a single sports entity, but they cap it at 5%. So they want the influx of the capital, but they don't want an investment so large that it imperils the control and the integrity of the American ownership. At least that's where they stand for now. And just as some American businesses cap it at whatever, 25%, in this case it's a sports entity, 5%, whatever it might be, the hope would be that while the Saudis and others continue to try and be involved in sports for whatever their motivation might be, that at least the American entities can hold the line and not give them undue control over the leagues, or in this case, the entities like the PGA.
All right. Well, that's obviously, as in a sense, we all know, but we all see, right? Money talks. Thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate your time. And next, we are learning incredible new details tonight about the moments leading up to a murder suspect's brazen escape from prison. A murder suspect who is still on the run and considered extremely dangerous. That is next. Plus, a massive dam in the Northeast now at risk of failing after a 1 in 1,000 year rain event. And we'll give you the very latest on that sinister development. And these types of storms are happening more and more. How come? A special report coming up.
Homeowners, when your water or sewer line breaks, it's expensive.
Is another party that's very angry at
St. Jude.
Who always won, the corporate elite and the billionaire class seem to think they keep calling the shots. Now, this is the UAW in full revolt against Biden and these electric vehicle and climate policies. And the guy's got a point, doesn't he? I mean, they're going to lose jobs. The Lordstown plant, among others, is closing. The wages are not keeping up, but the subsidies are going to big business.
I'm actually here in Findlay, Ohio, home of one of our great API member companies, Marathon Petroleum. What they do every day is they refine these products into the products that we use every single day, gasoline and diesel and other products. Now, this is a company that employs 2,000 people here in the state of Ohio. These are great paying jobs. This is also the home of Cooper Tire, and this is a big union state in the state of Ohio. And we need to continue to be able to produce these products.
Yes.
And produce these products here in the United States and in the great state of Ohio.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can add to it, but don't kill it off. I gotta go, Mike. But that's the point you're making. They're getting paid good money. It's all associated with the internal combustion engine. And gee, why kill it? That's just beyond belief. Mike Summers, API. Thank you, buddy. I got to rush into here. We got Steve Moore, FreedomWorks, and Committee to Unleash Prosperity, and his radio show, More Money. Steve Moore, I want to switch gears completely, despite all these complaints about Biden's top-down policies that are failing and his climate.
You can too.
Move for American president, but the stock market is booming right now, and I'm not sure anybody knows why, but your Committee to Unleash Prosperity, your hotline letter said, yeah, okay, stocks are up a little bit under Biden. In the first 30 months, year and a half, they're up 16%, but Trump was up 40% on the S&P, 35% on the Dow, and 162% on the NASDAQ. Wow. Why was that, Steve Moore? You got to explain this to us.
That's 800.
Years, Mercy Ships has deployed floating hospitals to provide the free surgeries these children need. Join us. Together.
Amen for the children.
Hazel irrigation.
Then peace mostly rejoiced. I mean, after all, racial discrimination's wrong. You can't treat someone differently because of their race. Except in the state of California, where the state legislature has this bright idea to bring affirmative action to the criminal justice system. Here's how it's going to work. Are you black? Are you Latino? Maybe a little Pacific Islander? Were your ancestors historically oppressed or persecuted by the white man? Have you by chance committed a crime? Well, you just might be in luck. You may be eligible for a reduced sentence under proposed Bill 852. If passed, it would require judges to take the race of the criminal into account during sentencing, not the victim, the criminal. Okay, Mr. Smith, I see you ripped off that liquor store and punched an old lady in the face, but it says here that you're 1/8 Native American. Let me check my notes. I think I can knock your sentence down a couple months in county. Somewhere Liz Warren's planning an identity theft. You hear that? That's the sound of thousands of criminal defense attorneys buying DNA test kits. Your Honor, my client's sorry for the carjackings. He really is. He's been doing a lot of introspection and looked back into his past and recently discovered he's a quarter black. So what do you say we give him 5 months instead of a year? The new criminal kit in California is going to be a pair of gloves, some bolt cutters, and 23andMe, just in case. But this is progressive America, folks. We're no longer judging people on the content of their character. We're judging them on the color of their skin.
Good grief. Good grief.
That Burham saw red and blue lights within 2 minutes of leaving that jail. They were that close. The corrections officers were literally within 2 minutes in the parking lot.
But not close enough. More than 15 local, state, and federal agencies are now looking for Burham. Tips have come in from 6 states.
We continue to find items. Those lead me to believe that there is still a likelihood that he is here.
In Pennsylvania, the search area spans more than 500,000 acres of forest in rural Warren County.
We're covering a lot of ground out there, and there are many public and private cabins. There are structures associated with oil and gas wells.
But this is at least the second time Burham has allegedly run from the police. Burham is the prime suspect in a recent homicide investigation in New York, according to authorities. Court documents say while New York law enforcement was seeking to question Burham about the homicide in May, he carjacked and kidnapped an elderly couple in Pennsylvania and fled to South Carolina. Police believe that Burham was watching the property of his Pennsylvania victims for a week before kidnapping them at gunpoint, driving them to South Carolina, and leaving them at a cemetery. A plastic tarp, camouflage clothing, and water bottles were all found near their home.
I do believe it's fair to say he's a dangerous individual, and people need to be alert to that.
Burham was captured and brought back to Pennsylvania on the carjacking and kidnapping charges. He hasn't been charged with the New York homicide yet. As the search for Burham continues, residents of Warren and the surrounding communities remain on edge.
Hopefully nothing happens. Hopefully they catch him soon.
I work at the hospital, Warren General, and we're under like complete lockdown. Every night, you gotta make sure the windows are locked, make sure both doors, front and back doors, are locked.
Danny, obviously, it's just amazing to see that rope that he created, and to think that he was able to escape 2 minutes and to get away. I mean, what are officials doing now when they hear about a potential sighting?
Well, Aaron, it's interesting. This operation is really not just reliant on manpower. When the Pennsylvania State Police say that they have any alleged sightings, what they're doing right now is they're actually rapid DNA testing the scene to see if it was actually Burham who was the person there. But Aaron, at this point, there still have been no confirmed sightings of him. Aaron?
Wow. I mean, it's amazing just to have that 2-minute window and to be able to go, obviously, he had a plan, but the fact that he was just able to thread that needle. Thank you very much, Danny, as we continue to monitor that situation. Next, thousands of homes and businesses in the Northeast are underwater after a historic storm that has a 0.1% chance of happening in any year. 0.1%. And yet, these types of rain events are becoming more and more common. You're hearing about a 1,000-year flood every year. We'll tell you why. Plus a Manson family member who took part in the grisly murders that terrorized Los Angeles and the entire country, tonight out of prison.
How does this Nobel...
Yep.
And so you raised this as an issue. Go ahead.
After I expressed my concerns and was told I could use the different locker rooms, the family changing, or not use the facilities. Me and a friend, a teammate actually, decided to put informative signs up in the women's locker room to express our concerns and to let people really just know what was actually happening at the Y. And the next day at practice, again, I know you already said we were both told that they were considered hate speech and disrespectful, and that the Y would follow up with our families, and that it probably was not appropriate for us to practice that evening.
And now you're off the swim team.
Yep. Later, they sent emails to my family and phone calls stating that I am currently banned from the Y until I have a meeting with the staff, and we further explained into the punishments that they were going to give us.
Well, Abigail, I really want to applaud you for taking this to another level, putting up the signs, expressing how uncomfortable this made you. You don't deserve to be kicked out or dropped from the swim team. We're going to follow up with the YMCA, the National YMCA, tomorrow about this and see if they can answer some questions. Thank you so much. What's your prime?
What was that?
What do you swim?
Oh, I swim butterfly.
All right.
2 butterfly, actually.
All right. That's the hardest stroke. You must be good. Abigail, thank you so much. We'll continue to cover this. This is absolutely insane.
Thank you so much, Mr. Waters.
All right.
Thank you.
Up next, you know how the windmills are killing whales at the Jersey Shore? Well, we found out it's like a money laundering operation. You're not going to believe it. Next.
Hey, Frank. This is crazy.
There you go. All fixed.
This is
heart valve was funded by the American Heart Association. To learn more.
Plaza can go from messy to
Only biological women should be allowed to play women's sports. Megan Rapinoe says, I see trans women as real women. It doesn't matter what your perception is. It doesn't matter what your delusion is. Biological men are not women. Biological men can't be women. We're abusing women and girls, and it is happening. It is happening. This woman who made her name, the only reason that even I'm talking about Megan Rapinoe is because she had the opportunity to excel in sports. The reason she had the opportunity to excel is because we divide sports, men and women's sports. If we didn't make that distinction between men and women's sports, no one would ever have heard of Megan Rapinoe because she's not good enough to play on a men's sports team. The U.S. national women's soccer team lost to a U15 boys team. High school boys beat professional women's soccer players because biological men are athletically superior to even the creme de la creme of female athletes. The only reason Megan Rapinoe is even being discussed right now is because we have women's sports. And yet she's actively taking part in destroying women's sports now that it won't affect her career. What she's advocating for now would have deprived her of not only excelling in the sport, which she did excel at. Again, credit where she's due. She was a phenomenal soccer player for a woman. But of course, she's not going to have to compete against the men that she now wants to force younger women's soccer players to compete against. It's so twisted, it's so convoluted, it's so evil, and it is happening. It's not just Leah Thomas, it's happening to young women, high schoolers, a 16-year-old in Illinois who's been kicked off the swim team for hate speech because she dared to say, I don't want to see male genitals in the locker room, it makes me uncomfortable. This point that we're at in our nation
is sick.
It's hard to believe. It's actually hard to believe. And I don't say that as any kind of colloquialism. I mean, some people still have a hard time believing that these are not just isolated incidents. We have a hard time believing that this is happening in our neighborhoods and in our schools and in our YMCAs and in our sports leagues. We think, oh, maybe this is happening in California. Maybe this is happening in New York. Maybe it's one person here or there. Maybe it's some weirdo. But it's not going to touch us. It's not going to touch our kids. It's not going to touch our communities. Let me tell you, it is the same way that we realize that critical race theory in schools is not just in California, not just in New York, not just in one random woke classroom with some blue-haired teacher. It's everywhere. This is everywhere too. We have the opportunity as conservatives to win here. The question is, are we going to do it?
Wow. Unbelievable.
Things that I am.
Of rainfall. The devastating situation is evidenced by other torrential rainfalls in the past year in Dallas, eastern Kentucky, St. Louis, and Yellowstone.
Oh my God, I can't get home.
In April, 6 months worth of rain fell in Fort Lauderdale in just 24 hours.
It's absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, you can see how shooken up I am.
Until rising global temperatures are under control, experts expect more catastrophic events like this one, rocking the Northeast now. Aaron, I know that's...
Didn't mention Waverly, Tennessee. They got hit too by a humongous deluge.
Aaron, I know that some places have the water receding like Montpelier, like some of the pictures there, but downhill from Montpelier, the water is still going up. So you have to be very careful not to say this is over, because for many, downriver, it is not over at all. And this all happened because of so much water in so little time. 4 to 8 inches of rainfall in just 48 hours on places that already had saturated ground. And the bad news is, Aaron, more rainfall is on the way. Thursday and Friday look very wet again, and that water's not going to soak in. It's just going to run off again. This is just one storm after another.
All right, Chad, thank you very much. And next tonight, a member of the infamous Manson family, who is a convicted murderer, has just been released from prison.
We're going to leave this at that towards the news on this particular segment of the Windmill Ministries missions. I want to say good luck to all of us as we get further into this thing of these irregularities that's happening pertaining to the imbalances happening with the forces of nature, just as the Bible had already done predicted that was going to occur in the last final remaining last days here upon to the earth. The only thing that I know to do is to pray for the victims of those who have went through so much horror. The mosquito malaria thing, I think that they're incorrect about what they said, that we hadn't had a case of that in 20 years. I think that there was some cases of that. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure there were some cases of that a few years ago. And as far as the intense heat, you know, it's summertime, but it is affecting people's lives. That I personally believe is the results from the atmosphere doing what it's doing and us doing what we're doing to the world. You know, they call these things a 1,000-year deal, but then 5 years from now it'll happen again. Sometimes even in the same place. And these people ain't out of the woods yet, because there's more to come, and there's still water rising downstream towards the dam that could possibly give way. Unbelievable. Like the ground giving away out in California. Wow. And to think that they're going to let a Manson murderer loose now? Wow. And they bought in to the PGA golf in allowing for the very enemy. I mean, how much are they willing to sell their integrity the next time for? It's sickening. It's nerve-wracking, and it's sickening. Only thing I can say is pray for America, pray for our troops. Good luck to each and every one of us as we struggle towards watching these unfolding events that continue to keep bombarding us in one direction or the other. And if there's ever been a time that we needed to bond together and pray for one another, it is of today. Thank you. Good luck to all of us, and shalom.